If she wants to survive in this social circle, she better learn to fall in line.
This season, I'm coming for everything. I want it all.
All right, Skye Squad, we are back in the building, and we're going to be talking about Basketball Wives. We are talking season 10, episode 17. So I want to get into a couple of things real quick. That was the trailer for my new book, The Wickedest Wives. It's a series. This is the first in the series, a very great introduction for you guys. You guys can order it on Amazon and the link in the description. It will be available on Audible in about a week, I would say. We're just waiting on that to get finished. But you guys can actually pre-order now, download it on Thursday, and you guys can also order the hardback and the paperback as well. All right, so and book 2 will be out hopefully in June, if not before. All right, so with that being said, listen, we got to talk about Basketball Wives. You know, this episode, I would tell you, there's a little bit of a problem with Basketball Wives, but it actually makes my job easier. Okay, so it's a good and a bad thing as I rate this episode. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm gonna rate this episode. I'm gonna give it like an 8. It's gonna get an 8 from me. It's gonna get an 8 from me. And the reason I say that is because I feel like Basketball Wives has a little bit of a formula, and I sometimes wish it was shot a little differently. I think that Basketball Wives as a whole, especially this season in general, there doesn't really feel to be any intensity except for the big confrontations. And what I mean by intensity is when you're watching a scene, it almost feels like, oh, we did a scene. You know, Jackie makes the rounds to all the corporate housing, checking in with this person, checking in with that person. Everything feels like a little minor check-in, and there feels like a lot of times when I'm watching, it doesn't feel like I feel like I'm missing some depth to the scenes. Sometimes I feel like a scene doesn't really move the storyline forward, but I can understand the purpose of the scene. So I don't know. It's there's something that's missing, and I cannot for the life of me tell you exactly what it is. Maybe it's Malaysia. I don't know. I don't even think it's Malaysia because I feel like, I mean, she wasn't here and I didn't really feel her absence. I don't know what that's saying, but it is what it is. And speaking of Malaysia, one of the things that I did like about this episode was that they dive right into Malaysia quitting the show and they break the fourth wall. So that to me, that scene and the ending scene that bookended this episode were the best scenes of the episode and probably the things that made this episode really worth watching because there was a lot of filler. Mhm. And the driving force behind these two scenes involve, whether you like it or not, Brandy. Part of it is the Brandy and Malaysia of it all. Part of it is the Brandy and the Duffy of it all. Brandy in the first scene, it's by happenstance because it's really mostly about the ladies reacting to the news that Malaysia has quit the show. So let's talk about it. Duffy, no, it's not Duffy. It's Brandy, British, Brooke, the 3 Bs, and Jackie are all walking the ducks. And, British is lamenting about having to get this ankle monitor. And Jackie essentially reveals to them that Malaysia has left the group. And so Brooke literally stops and is like, wait. She turns to production and says, Malaysia quit the show. They keep this in there, which I think is interesting. And we see the producer on the screen tell her, yeah, she quit the show. Okay. For Brandy, she had talked to Malaysia, which I thought was very interesting for them to be in this weird space. She had actually talked to Malaysia. So that tells me that maybe one of them checked in on the other after that whole revelation that Malaysia's house was allegedly lost in the foreclosure of it all. So I thought that was interesting. I wish we could have dived further into that. That's interesting. I would like to know more about how that conversation went. But we gloss right over that and we dive into, at first Jackie tries to keep things pretty politically correct. Well, um, there was the whole thing with her not being able to get support allegedly from, let me put the alleged badge up here because the people is litigious these days. Um, Allegedly not getting support from Gennaro with the kids. And, Jackie is like, some kind of way the tables turn and it turns real because the ladies have questions like, listen, if she's going through that whole situation, why would you, for Brooke especially, she's like, why would you quit your main source of income? And I was like, is this Malaysia's main source of income? That's a very good question. I would really like to know that. I would reasonably have to assume, and maybe this is incorrect, that after doing the show all this many years, some chips would have been stacked. However, I do understand that when you having to dip into savings to take care of this, that, and the third, dipping into savings can sooner or later turn into robbing Peter to pay Paul. Okay? So there's that. And then, they talk about how the rest of them have opened up their lives and talked about their challenges. And Malaysia didn't feel like she could do that, allegedly. But I'm like, but I feel like I did get I didn't get the full scope if the foreclosure did happen. I didn't get that. She didn't say those words verbatim, but she talked around having some financial issues. Okay. I think that was pretty clear. Maybe it's because she didn't talk to them, as British so eloquently stated, that she felt like the ladies provided a safe space for her, and she feels sad that Malaysia didn't feel safe with them. Why would she feel safe with y'all when y'all hooping and hollering at her at every episode, especially you British? So for me, you can't expect somebody to lay their burdens bare if you don't seem like you are going to be welcoming to that in any way, shape, or form. Why would she do that? So riddle me that. So we talk about that. Um, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give you the breakdown of what has gone on in this episode by person and then get to the real meat and potatoes of the episode. Duffy is going to therapy with her man. The therapist ultimately does give her some great advice. There's a difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. The therapist also notices that Duffy has a problem with interrupting Iman, and she tells her, hey, why don't you try raising your hand and asking if you could speak if you feel like he is so long-winded, as Duffy tells her. So they come to some compromise, and Duffy realizes that perhaps she may have, Brandy could have been right about some things about her not listening in their previous argumentation. While I do agree with that, I also think that Brandy's tone and the way she spoke to Duffy was demeaning and degrading, especially for someone who seems to have a lot more patience for her husband. Now, I will tell you that yes, you are married to this person, so you definitely have to have more patience with them. But I also feel like for somebody that if you guys are as close as you say, okay, then why don't you have just a bit more patience for your girlfriends? Okay. Um, because Brandy takes very hard stances with these girls, but she seems to take very soft stances from what we have seen in the past with her husband and even in this episode. So speaking of Brandy, she wants because Jackie makes the rounds to all the corporate apartments. I will say this though, when looking at the corporate apartments, British got the short end of the stick. Brandy's is a little bit better. Okay. A lot better, actually, a lot bigger. So anyway, you know, Jackie goes to visit her, gives her some really solid advice about, how to do this whole thing with being married to somebody that wants to coach. And, also taking the time to do the things that Brandy wants to do, which is the cookbook. She wants to be the Black Rachel Ray. Great. Okay, great. Because Brandy, we find out, is also flying back and forth. So she's 3 days in LA, 3 days in Dallas. It's really like that, which that type of travel can have a wear and tear on you, which might also be another reason why she's so irritated with Duffy. It has to come out someplace. Ultimately, she does take Jason because there's a little bit of him and hawing from Jason, a little theater involved with him coming out to visit her more. Ultimately, over an Italian cooking class, he does decide, okay, I'll come out and spend some more time with you. Okay. Especially when the son get out of school. I'll fly out here more. And this just makes Brandy over the moon, but she ain't in no better mood with the girls. British gets her ankle monitor, which causes Jackie to break down in tears. Okay. Jackie has never seen an ankle monitor in person. Several of the girls have never seen an ankle monitor in person, and it is ginormous. Okay. British does realize that she has to pay the piper, and this is punishment. So she understands that she did wrong and she needs to do what she needs to do. The way they chronicle in this whole storyline is really something like I've never seen before on reality TV. I mean, it almost seems like, oh, she's just got to go, go to the post office. And because nobody likes it. Y'all ever notice how rude these people in the post office be on a regular basis? I don't know about y'all, but the post office that's down the street from me, they are rude. And I don't care if they hear what I say. They are rude, okay? Stop yelling at these folks when they come up in there. Don't nobody know all of your rules and regulations. Anyway, with that being said, Brooke makes the divorce final, and she wants to have a fitness event. So that's where all the girls are going to gather at the end of the episode. Angel brings us back. She is trying to balance motherhood with trying to get back to work, I guess, because Malaysia going, they got to add in some spice. We'll see how much she brings on that. I do feel like one of the great things that Angel brings does is she adds an element of kind of boss energy. And what I mean by that is it's not like a boom, I'm gonna hit you in the face boss energy, but it is the type of energy where she's making clothes for Mary J. Blige and Lil Kim. I mean, that's some boss type of stuff. And you get to see this family life. We can see her kids, we can see, the man she's with. So I like that element that she does bring. She ain't the strongest personality, but she seems like she's got some things going on, right? So it's the day of the fitness event. Jackie brings her snacks and Brooke promptly throws them away. Duffy, armed with her new therapy, is, not really trying to go up against Brandy, but she knows she's going to have the conversation. So it's funny to me listening to the women talk to Brandy and Duffy separately. It feels to me, as Brandy states, that she has all these boundaries in place now, and she's not going to let people talk to her any kind of way. It's just difficult for me because I also know what she's been through with her husband. So I'll be like, girl, like, you could have a little bit more patience for Duffy in this situation that is not that deep, because the way you are putting up this wall is like she had cut you, like she stole your tires off your car, like she took the last piece of chicken off of your plate. Okay, it is not that deep that Brandy needs to be reacting the way that she's reacting, because Duffy to me seems like hesitant and like real trying to tiptoe around Brandy. So when they do finally have their conversation, it turns really into, well, you brought up my man. You brought up my man. Well, I didn't bring up your man to take a dig at him. I brought it up to take a dig at you. And they just kind of going back and forth at each other. But it's really the feeling that I'm getting, that I feel like Brandy is already, and as she says it, she's real easy these days to say, deuces to people and to cut people off. And that, again, is so funny to me, because this man has done so much worse to you. And I understand you married, you took these vows, and you ain't making no vows to these girlfriends. But dang, like, you would think, again, like I said, that Duffy had stole the clothes off of her back, the money in her bank account. And even Jennifer notices that. And they try to tell her, like, girl, you talk to her crazy. Anyway, that don't stop her because she's still talking to her crazy. And finally, Duffy has to tell her, like, no, girl, you are trying to play the victim and the villain at the same time. And you just not really trying to let that go. And obviously, it's going to continue into next week as well. And we ended on a to be continued. So that was this episode of Basketball Wives. I could tell y'all, listen, the review will be longer, but it really wasn't that much going on for me to, sit down and really get into the ponderosa of things. I've given you the highlights. So listen. Hopefully next week we get some more meat and potatoes because honestly, these hors d'oeuvres that they are serving every episode with this light and fluffy and halfway throughout the episode, I'm going to need a little bit more substance. Okay? Work that out. With that being said, I will catch you all in the next video. So I'm Richie Skye, the author and publisher of The Wickedest Wives, Desiree's Desire, which is book 1 in a series. This book is about redemption. It's the story of a disgraced journalist who has lost everything. And now she has to rebuild her life brick by brick. And what better way to do that than to join a reality TV show? Why not? Now, not only are we talking reality TV, so there's going to be scandal, there's going to be a little bit of deception, backstabbing, a little romance, and why not throw in a sprinkle of murder to really round out the excitement? So I really want you guys to dive headfirst into these books. Desiree's Desire is just the first of many to come. So I'm super excited for you guys to read this, and I want to know exactly what you think. So be sure to follow, like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.